Before he became an icon, Christopher George Wallace, a.k.a. Biggie Smalls, had quite the roller coaster of a life. Now you in for a ride as we look into the untold story of the Notorious B.I.G. Now can you believe that Biggie's path from a 12-year-old crack dealer to a hip-hop icon was fraught with depression, paranoia, episodes of aggression, and entangled in the infamous East Coast-West Coast feud? Early life and nicknames. Let's explore the early life and the fascinating origins of the nicknames Big and Biggie Smalls for Christopher George Wallace, who would later become known as the Notorious B.I.G. Christopher George Wallace, the man behind the iconic persona of the Notorious B.I.G., entered this world on May 21, 1972 at St. Mary's Hospital in Brooklyn, New York. See, his family background offered a glimpse into both hard work and a touch of politics. Now his pops, George Wallace, was of Jamaican descent and earned a living as a welder, all while dabbling in local politics. In contrast, his mom's, Violetta Wallace, worked as a preschool teacher. The young Christopher, who'd one day be hailed as Biggie, was the only kid. Now his journey into fame would begin in the vibrant neighborhood of Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn. Now Bed-Stuy, as we all affectionately call it, was far from your average neighborhood. Now it was a place where dreams collided with gritty realities. Biggie's upbringing here was a unique blend of challenges and opportunities. Now the streets of Bed-Stuy weren't always gentle, and they would soon become the backdrop against which Biggie's early life played out. Now these experiences would shape his destiny and lead him down a path that would ultimately establish him as a hip-hop legend. So let's talk about them cool nicknames that he had. Now back when he was in school, his friend called him Big, cause well, he was a big dude. But when he started making a name for himself in the world of music, he went by Biggie Smalls. Now, this is where things get a little bit interesting. The Notorious B.I.G., also known as MCO West, Biggie Smalls and Biggie, was one of the most influential rappers of the 1990s. Now, Biggie Smalls was the name he took after a character in the 1975 film Let's Do It Again, where Biggie Smalls was played by actor Calvin Lockhart. But in the early 1990s, a young rapper from the West Coast named Tim Bigelow was already performing under the name of Biggie Smalls. Now he started recording music at just 12 years old in 1991 and released 3 songs. Now as B.I.G's popularity grew, he was threatened with legal action from the original Biggie Smalls, so he changed his name to the Notorious B.I.G. before releasing more music. But before the man became a famous rapping icon, he was involved in some not so great kinda shady stuff. Street life and early beginnings. Biggie's experience in the streets was far from ordinary. Growing up in Bed-Stuy, he found himself navigating a world where dreams often collided with harsh realities. Now the streets was a place where Biggie's early experiences would mold his future. Now he encountered countless drug addicts and dealers while roaming his local areas, gaining first-hand exposure to the harshness of life in his hood. Now Biggie's involvement in drug dealing began at a shockingly young age. By the tender age of 12, he'd already embarked on a path that would lead him to become a full-fledged crack dealer. And as he got older, his involvement in this dangerous world deepened, and by the age of 15, he'd established himself as a full-time crack dealer. Now, it was one hell of a precarious lifestyle for a teen, but it was a means to make a living in the tough streets of Brooklyn. Now, balancing school and street life, that wasn't no small feat for Biggie. Now, he attended George Westinghouse Career and Technical Education High School alongside future rap legends like DMX, Busta Rhymes, and Jay-Z. Now, while his peers were engaging in rap battles during lunch breaks, Biggie remained focused on his own hustle. He didn't collaborate with these future stars, but was instead occupied with making money on the streets. Now, his life was a precarious juggling act between the classroom and the hustle of the streets, and of course, the neighborhood influence was a big part of all that. The neighborhood's influence. Now in Bed-Stuy, where Biggie grew up, his dreams mixed with the tough realities of life. His dad, George, came from Jamaica and made a living by welding and getting involved in local politics. Now his mom's, Violetta Wallace, was a dedicated preschool teacher. Now Biggie's family showed a mix of hard work and big ambitions. But money was often tight, which made things more complicated during his childhood. Sometimes he had to deal with both good opportunities and tough challenges at the same time. Now, Bed-Stuy was a lively place with lots of different cultures, but it could also be a tough hood. It was like a melting pot. But was his experience in school any different than it was on the streets? Legal troubles and music aspirations. Biggie had some early run-ins with the law that kind of hinted at the bumpy ride he was in for. Now, he got busted for having some weapons back in 1989, which was his first taste of trouble with the cops. Then, in the next year, he ended up behind bars again, this time because he broke the rules while on probation. But the real trouble came when he got involved in selling crack cocaine, which landed him in prison in North Carolina. Now, this all happened while he was still a teen, making it a pretty rough chapter in his life. But then things took a turn when Biggie decided to finally get serious about his music. Now, after he got out of prison, he realized he needed a change because the streets weren't bringing him any peace, so he decided to put his talents into something different. Now, that's when he made up his mind to go all in on a music career. Now, this decision was a big deal in his life and ended up making him a global superstar. Paranoia and feuds. Biggie's journey from a street-smart rapper to a super paranoid guy was like a wild roller coaster ride. I mean, it was a huge change for the man. Now, even though he became a big deal in the music world and everybody knew who he was, he just couldn't shake off his old street life. That constant worry and fear came from all the crazy stuff that he went through on those tough streets, dealing with all sorts of people, including some pretty shady characters. Now, this constant fear of somebody coming after him for his money or for his past actions really messed up with his head, man. Now, it's been noted by multiple sources that Biggie was always on edge, always looking over his shoulder, and this paranoia became a big part of who he was. Now, sometimes this paranoia showed up in aggressive behavior, and other times in his songs. Now, if you really go into his lyrics for the song Warning, you'll see that he was super paranoid about a lot of things. There were even times when he got into fights with fans, like when he beat up a guy after his show got canceled, or when he used a baseball bat to deal with some rowdy fans. Now, these incidents showed the inner struggles that he was facing and the pressure he felt as a famous rapper. And then there was that whole East Coast West Coast hip hop feud that was going on in the 90s. Now, that just added on to Biggie's growing paranoia. Now, many believe that there was even a point when he was contemplating suicide. Now, if you check out his song Suicidal Thoughts, you'll see that he was really thinking about committing suicide, and his character in the video even ended up killing himself. Now, I don't know about you, man, but I'd say that is one intense life story. So what y'all think about the man's life before he hit it big? Make sure you let me know what you're thinking in the comment section down below. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories from the world of music and beyond. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I'll catch you next time.